Okay, on this video we're going to be doing the aggression and fatigue ratings. So we're in my rating file here, and we're going to look at the table for aggression, which is going to use hits per 60, and we're going to be looking at the table for fatigue, which uses minutes, time on ice per game. Notice there's two tables. There's forwards and there's defensemen. Just always make sure that you're using the right one. I can't tell you how many times I've been working down a list of players and I go from forward into defense and forget to switch over to the defense table, and I rate 2, 3, 4, 5 players before I realize what's happened, and I have to go back and redo those ratings. So instead of flipping back and forth between tabs all the time while I'm rating, I actually just print out those tables and I have them taped to my monitor so that it's just real easy to glance at those. So let's go. I've already done several of these teams, so let's just go to Colorado as the next team I need to work on here. So I'm going to minimize this to the side. We're going to get these stats off of NHL.com stats page. And the way we do it in the WHL is I really look at the last 3 seasons. I don't average the last 3 seasons, but I just use them for reference. So we're always going to give the most recent season the heaviest weight in that. But we'll use this prior season and even 2 seasons before just to confirm things that we're seeing, and make sure that we're not giving players like crazy ratings based off of like a small sample size or just like a real anomaly type of statistic season. So to do that, we need to set our seasons. We need 3 seasons in our range, and we don't want to sum the results because we want to see each of those seasons separately. And the report we're going to use is miscellaneous. All right, so this is going to give us our hits per 60, which we're going to use in this chart here on the table. And we're going to use time on ice per game played, which is going to be on this table for fatigue. So let's just start at the top here with the first player, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. So let's isolate him. Like I said, so 2021 is the season we're going to look at first because that's the most recent season. So here, his hits per 60 was 2.59, and that's going to be in this 2 to 4 range on hits. So his aggression rating will be a 6 based on that. And we'll just confirm it. The season before, 1920, 2.78. So having 2 seasons in a row like that, I'm confidently going to give him a 6. We could go back. He did have a little more the season before, but that's 2 years ago, and it's really at the bottom end of that 7 range. So I think a 6 is very appropriate for him here. I have no issues giving him that. So then we're going to go to his time on ice. He skated 11 minutes and 20 seconds this season. That's going to put him again at a 6 for fatigue because he's in that 11 to 14 and a half range. He was also in that range last year and the year before. So quite easily, he gets a 6 for fatigue. And then we move on to the next player, Carl Soderberg. All right, Soda had 6 hits per game last year. That puts him in the 4 to 8 hit range. And 7 is an aggression. He was also in that 4 to 8 range the 2 years prior to that. So we're going to give him a 7. Time on ice, 14.25. That's right here at the very top end of a 6. It's right below 14.30. But if we go back and confirm it for the last 2 seasons, 1920, he was actually above that. He was in this 14.5 to 18 range. He was also in that the season before. So what I'll do in a case like this He's so close. He's 5 seconds per game off of that mark, and he beat it the last 2 seasons. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of having him in that 6, I'm going to keep him up here at the 7. And then we'll see, next season, if he falls in that range again, I'll probably bring him down to a 6 then. But I want to see, consecutive seasons. Unless he like really blew away the range, if it wasn't 14.25, if it was like 11.25, then he'd be at the very low end here, and then I'd probably bring him back into that 6 range. Or if he was 10 minutes a game, then I would definitely average those out and bring it down to a 6. All right, let's move on. Jason Megna. So Jason Megna, 11 hits per 60, which he did 2 years in a row. On our chart here, 11 per 60 is going to be in that 8 to 14 range, and his aggression rating would be an 8. For fatigue, he skated 10 minutes per game this year. He's going to be in that 5 range. Now the season before that, 1920, he was at 643 per game, which is we have 4 for fatigue. When there's only 2 seasons here, games played are about even. I'm going to give the most recent season, 2021, I'm going to give that the most weight. So I'm going to go with that 10-15 per game in that 7.5 to 11 range. And he's going to get a 5 for fatigue. Here, 5 for fatigue. All right, let's move on to Nazem Kadri. I'm going to do about 5 players each on this one. So Kadri, 2.3 hits per game, or per 60, sorry. Puts him in the 6 range here. But each prior season, he was above 4 in that 7 range. And I think, based on his reputation, I think he's a little more of an aggressive player. He probably toned it down last year to avoid suspensions that he's been dealing with. But until we see it 2 years in a row, I'm going to keep him at 7 aggression. And then we'll move on to fatigue. 16 minutes per game, 17, 16. Each one of those is going to fall into this 14.5 to 18 minute range, and his fatigue rating is going to be a 7. Last player we'll do on forwards, Sheldon Dries or Sheldon Dries, not sure. I try to watch so much hockey, but I just don't have every pronunciation down right. All right, so, and he's a hard one. He had only had a few games each of the last 2 years. So he had 15 hits per game there, 27 there. Both of those are above the high end of 14. So even when he did play a good amount of games, he had a high hits per 60. It wasn't a 9, but I'm confident in giving him that 9 here. He did it 2 years in a row. And fatigue, 7.5, just about 7 there. So we can give him a 5 because the season he did play more games. He was at 9 minutes per game. So I think that's going to verify what we're seeing here, over 7.5. And we'll give him a 5 for fatigue. All right, so let's move on to some defensemen now. Eric Johnson. So now we're going to be looking at this block here. This is our defenseman. The hits is going to be the same, but fatigue is way different for defensemen. So you have to pay careful attention there. So Johnson had 7 hits per game, 7.8 hits per 60 in the 2021 season, which puts him in that 4 to 8 range. the last 2 seasons confirm that he was over 4. So we're going to give him a 7. For fatigue, boy, he really had a rough season there. I guess he was injured. Played only 13 minutes per game. So because he only had 4 games played last season, I'm really going to ignore that because it just seems so out of the ordinary for him. The last 2 seasons, he skated over 21 minutes per game. And that's going to put him in this 8 range, 21 to 25. So we're going to give him an 8 for fatigue. If he has another really bad season, then we'll probably drag it down. But right now, it looks like that was just an anomaly due to injury. If a guy gets injured in the first period, it really drags his time on ice down. All right, Patrick Nemeth. Patrick Nemeth. 2021 season, 5.5 hits per 60. That's in the 7 range. So 4 to 8 hits per 60 gives him a 7 for aggression. The season before, he was a little bit below that, but in 18-19 he was right in there too. So 2 out of the last 3 seasons he was a 7. The most recent season he was a 7. So with that weight, we're definitely going to give him a 7 for aggression. His fatigue, he skated 18 minutes per night. That puts him in the 17.5 to 21 range. And he was slightly ahead of that actually the year before, slightly below it 2 years ago. So I think if we split the difference there and we give more weight to the most recent season, I think giving him a 7 is very reasonable there. Jacob McDonald. Jacob McDonald. Now, he has 2 seasons played, but one of them was 2 years ago, and he only played 2 games, so I'm pretty much just going to ignore those stats like they don't exist because it's so irrelevant, I think, to what player he is right now. But he had 33 games this season, so his stats are pretty solid, reliable enough to go on. So 4 hits per 60 gives him a 7 for aggression. And he skated 14:57 time on ice, which is right here in the 6 range, which is 14 to 17.5 minutes. Moving on to Devin Taves. There we go. Oh my gosh, I can't spell. All right, Devin Taves. All right, Devin Taves this season, 2 hits per game, 2 hits per 60 the year before. So that seems to be a solid trend for him, and he's going to get a 6 for aggression. Time on ice. He had a breakout season, skated 24 minutes per game this year. That's in the 21 to 25 range, and 8 fatigue. The season before, he skated 20 minutes and 30 seconds. It's so close. It's 29 seconds per game off. So if I'm giving the most weight to the recent season, and he's well above that, he's almost at 25 minutes a game. And he was so close to being in that range last year, so we're definitely going to give him an 8 for fatigue. If he had just barely broken into this range, a little over 21 minutes, and the season before had been well below, I'd probably hold him back to a 7. But since he blew past that mark and he was really close the season before, I'm going to give him an 8. All right, Dan Renouf. Renouf or Renouf? He hasn't played enough games for me to know how to say his name. 18 games last year. He doesn't have any past stats to go on, so we're just going to straight up take what he has here. 6 hits per 60 is a 7. And 10 minutes time on ice, that's really low. Less than 14 minutes, he's going to get a 5 for fatigue. So that's how we rate players on aggression and fatigue. We'll have some follow-up videos to get the other ratings.